We've got another script-to-screen episode today, as you can see, focusing on the first Muppet Movie from 1979. Drafts of most, though sadly not all, theatrical Muppet movies are available online, so I will look at the ones that I can access at some point. The Muppets had established themselves as solid television characters by the late 70s, but Jim Henson was always wanting to push the boundaries of things. When you've conquered TV, move on to the big screen. And so, in 1977, Jim Henson and Jack Burns developed an outline called The Muppet Get-Together. Jack Burns was the head writer of The Muppet Show for its first season, and had a knack for endearingly corny jokes, hence why those kinds of jokes have become something of a hallmark for the Muppets. After Burns wrote 2 drafts, another writer, Jerry Jewell, did some revisions. Jewell was the head writer of The Muppet Show for its remaining 4 seasons, and also worked on the screenplays to The Great Muppet Caper, The Muppet Christmas Carol, Muppet Treasure Island, and Muppets from Space, not to mention being a driving force behind the development of Fraggle Rock. With 2 very talented writers on board, Henson knew the script was in good hands. The draft we're looking at is dated June 12, 1978, and is credited to Burns and Jewell. It is somewhat close to the final movie, but there are still enough differences to be able to have some fun analyzing. Before I start the analysis proper, I should mention that the Muppet fan site TOUGHPIGS also did an in-depth look at this draft in a series of articles called The Road to Hollywood. Some of their thoughts echo my own, and I'm putting a link in the description so you can read what they had to say as well. I recommend you do. These people really know their Muppets. The script begins the same way as the final movie does, with Statler and Waldorf arriving at the theater where the Muppet Movie is to be screened. The script also shows the arrival of Miss Piggy, Kermit, and his nephew Robin. When the proper movie begins, instead of a gradual zoom in from the sky, we start even higher, in what they describe as the endless reaches of outer space. We continue to our galaxy, our solar system, our Earth, and then finally toward the swamp where Kermit is. The music accompanying this journey was to be an enormous orchestral piece that was to get simpler as we get closer to Kermit. Perhaps it was meant to emphasize how Kermit views himself as one little frog in the big universe. Kermit is, of course, playing his banjo and singing. Instead of the philosophical Rainbow Connection, his song is described as a lovely little tune about how content he is with his lot in life. The Hollywood agent, that would end up being played by Dom DeLuise, comes by and lets Kermit know about the upcoming Animal auditions, although his emphasis on why Kermit should go out for stardom is not to make millions of people happy, but rather to be rich and famous. While the rich and famous motif would still be used as one of the driving forces of Kermit's dream in the final cut, the decision to make the main goal the happiness of others was a good choice, much more in tune with Jim Henson himself. Unlike the final movie, where Kermit is immediately next seen on the road, the script takes time to show Kermit contemplating leaving more. He stops by a bait shop that he apparently runs with George, who was to be played by George Burns. While their scene together was ultimately scrapped, and for good pacing reasons, there is a nice exchange between the two of them. "This is your home. You have friends. A frog belongs here. But I've got a chance to be rich and famous. I mean, it's hard to just toss that off. Maybe it's a long shot, but I could be loved by millions someday. I love you now. Aw, George, I love you too. And I love the swamp. But I just have to try. Just once." "Yeah, I know. There's only one once." Another sad little scene follows, where Kermit is walking at night still thinking. A pair of yellow eyes appear in the dark, part of a large, shaggy, threatening creature.
"Hi, Kermit."
"Oh, hi, Fred." The creature grunts and leaves. Kermit doesn't realize and continues talking. "Oh, wait, Fred. I'm leaving tomorrow and I never said goodbye." Once Kermit is on the road, he has a few encounters that never made it into the final cut. First, his bike is destroyed by a truck in a similar manner to the movie itself, but in the script we see that the driver is a literal roadhog, a Muppet pig. Kermit next met a lovely gas station attendant, a potential celebrity cameo, who immediately kissed him, hoping he'd turn into a prince. According to her, she'd had terrible luck so far. Kermit was the 6th frog she'd kissed that month. A moment later, an actual prince, another celebrity cameo, was to ride up, and Kermit would leave in disgust. What followed was one of the weirdest running gags conceived for a Muppet movie. Yes, weirder than Kermit and Fozzie being identical twins, or Fozzie believing a little man lived in his finger. Kermit would be approached by a sheriff who was to be played by Secretary of State Henry Kissinger. The script notes in parentheses, "Yes, folks, the real Henry Kissinger. We know it's impossible, but we'll get him anyway." Apparently, it ended up being a little more impossible than they thought. Henry pesters Kermit for a part in the movie, but is rejected. And yes, I said this was a running gag. Mr. Kissinger appears in the very next scene at the El Sleazo bar, complaining about being snubbed. Fozzie's comedy routine originally included Statler and Waldorf seated in the audience, heckling him as always. In the movie, Fozzie tries to tell a joke about a fat sailor only to offend an actual fat sailor in the audience. The script has this scene as well, but also includes a joke about a cross-eyed lumberjack and a green-haired, donkey-eared little person, with similar results. These scenes were apparently filmed, as the credits include the lumberjack and little person. In a scene that somehow predicted the Mario Kart games, when Fozzie and Kermit are driving away, Fozzie nonchalantly eats a banana and tosses the peel out the window. Doc Hopper and Max are discreetly following them in their own car and run over the banana peel, skidding off the road and into a fire hydrant. When Kermit and Fozzie meet the Electric Mayhem Band, the drummer is not Animal, but some guy named Charlie, who was going to be a guest cameo. He mentions that he's more interested in real estate work than drumming. Scooter is not there as the bus driver either. While both he and Animal would still appear later in the script, it was such an odd choice to ever make. Animal has appeared without the band plenty of times, but the band appearing without Animal just feels very wrong. After leaving the band and evading Hopper again, a scene was written and apparently filmed where Hopper's car drives into a ditch, and in a contrived fashion, Hopper ends up covered in feathers. Gonzo was to be distracted by Hopper mistaking him for a large ugly chicken, which was what led him to crashing into Kermit and Fozzie. I should say right now that there are a bunch of Hopper chase moments here that I'm not even mentioning or just skimming over that were cut, and for good reason. Hopper's relentless pursuit of the Muppets is more threatening in the final movie because he keeps popping up from time to time to remind the audience that even though we can't see him, he's still out there looking for Kermit and could appear at any moment. In the script, when he seems to show up on every other page, he loses a good deal of his bite. Although the Muppet Movie is by no means a horror film, the old adage that the things you can't see are often scarier than what you can works here as well. When Miss Piggy first sees Kermit, she sings her love ballad, Never Before, Never Again. The song was conceived as being played straight and sung by Johnny Mathis, though still with the humorously over-the-top visuals of Kermit and Piggy's romantic montage. Jim Henson decided that it would be funnier if Piggy herself sang it, which was the right choice because Frank Oz truly delivered on the performance, especially the final line. You know what I'm talking about. Johnny did get to finally perform the song in the TV special The Muppets Go Hollywood, which is definitely worth a listen as well. Speaking of songs, the scene with Rolf and Kermit singing I Hope That Something Better Comes Along, referred to as Cynical Love Song in the script, was a bit longer, including Kermit ordering a grasshopper and a few extra verses. The extended version can be heard on the soundtrack release, and the full scene is intact on the UK video release of the movie, which is floating around on YouTube as of this date. Statler and Waldorf were supposed to be sitting nearby as well, and while the scene was filmed based on pictures, the footage has never been released. Oh, and Henry Kissinger tries to appear as a waiter beforehand. When the film reel breaks, there's a little more conflict in the theater. For one thing, Piggy disagrees with the story claiming she abandoned Kermit for an acting gig. And now, ladies and gentlemen, my attempt at doing a Miss Piggy voice.
All right, El Toro.
Beg pardon?
That was not the way it happened.
It was too.
It wasn't. I've told you repeatedly the only reason I left was that my mother was sick. That's the only reason.
You said it was your aunt. Fozzie and Scooter are also unsatisfied.
Hey, Kermit, you cut my joke about the electricians and the polar bear.
You think you got problems? How have you liked my scenes so far?
You haven't had any scenes so far.
I rest my case. Kermit notices Henry Kissinger sitting in the theater and kicks him out. He's not even in this part of the movie. When the movie starts back up, Fozzie sings America the Beautiful, but instead of the song being a montage that is sung while he's driving, the gang has actually stopped at Mount Rushmore and are all impatiently waiting for Fozzie to finish his song. After they drive off, the Rushmore heads come to life, revealed to be convincing Muppets, like in one of the Muppet Show pilots. The presidents vote to let Henry Kissinger hang out with them, and the camera pulls out to reveal a Muppet Kissinger head that has been added to Rushmore. Finally, Henry has been accepted somewhere. Shortly after, the gang stops at a gas station so Fozzie can use the bathroom. Scooter appears as a gas station attendant along with his quote-unquote dog played by Animal, something that Rolf does not appreciate. Scooter and Animal join the group, with them picking up Piggy a little farther down the road. Doc Hopper is heard over the radio threatening them to stop. While the movie leaves it at just that, another threat, the script has a scene where he somehow managed to track their exact location and has explosives planted on the highway. He has Max count down and detonate the bombs, but Max accidentally miscounts and the Muppets narrowly avoid being blown off the road. A montage set to Movin' Right Along follows as the Muppets drive through the desert, passing Statler and Waldorf riding a camel. Once again, photos show this elaborate bit of puppetry was filmed but cut, which is an absolute shame. Gonzo's beautiful song, I'm Going to Go Back There Someday, was originally intended to be a Gonzo-Scooter duet, but since Scooter is not present in the final version of the scene, Gonzo gets to have the spotlight to himself. When the Electric Mayhem Band comes to find everyone, Floyd was also going to have a song about a joyous reunion, but if anything was ever written, it's never been released. Charlie the drummer has left, presumably for a real estate job, and the band quickly lets Animal join, seeing his knack for drumming. Instead of Max warning Kermit that Hopper is still after them with hired killers, they simply see Doc and his men trailing them. As you may have noticed, Max is a much less sympathetic character than he ended up being, and acts more as a generic henchman to Hopper. Most of what happens from here until the end is basically the same as the movie, with only a few minor changes. In producer Lou Lord's office, for example, there is an open window with a rainbow coming through, landing on a pot of gold. Even for this movie, I think that symbolism was a bit heavy-handed. The final production number lacks the destruction of the set, and was meant to pull back into space at the end where the movie began. The general idea was still there, though, a love letter to the movies with an enormous ensemble of whatever Muppets they had access to. A few other running gags were sprinkled through the script that I didn't even touch on. In the early scenes set near the El Sleazo, there were various visual jokes with title cards interacting with the characters, some that sounded clever but would have taken too long to describe properly. Robin was going to pop up at a few points in the movie to let us know how much he's enjoying himself. There were also a few extra shots of Sweetums running after the cast. Ultimately, if the draft of the Muppet movie that we just looked at was filmed entirely as is, it would have been a pretty good movie. But with the fine-tuning that it received, it was released as a wonderful movie. That's one reason I love looking at these screenplays. It's great to see what could have been, but it also helps you appreciate what we got in the end.